So yes, why don't you kick us off? What are you going to start with?
All right. So I think the buy now, pay later space is very active the last few months, right? And the latest one here was just, who was it? Affirm. So they've recently partnered with Amazon. You saw their stock go up 20-30%. And then the next day, or not next day, but like a week or so later, they announced their earnings, which was way better than expected and shot up another 20-30%, right? That said, I think, yesterday was a little more iffy for the tech space. I don't actually know how Affirm did it, but I think when I quickly saw it, it was down 10%. But what have you, right? I think this is a very interesting space, right? Because, number one, like Square has put in an offer to buy the biggest player right now, Afterpay, which is located in Australia. So Affirm's the second largest one. And at this moment, Amazon's essentially working very closely with them to essentially I wouldn't be surprised if they end up buying them in the near future as well, right? And then something that was also very fascinating is PayPal. They bought the buy now, pay later space of Japan, right? And I think it's called Paydi. Wow. And I mean, yeah, I mean, in Japan, from what I heard, I think not even 70% of the people there still use cash, right? But I guess for some reason, PayPal still found it to be valuable enough to decide, hey, you know what? Maybe they're seeing that, a change in consumption behavior.
COVID.
Where they're like, this is actually a chance or opportunity for us to buy a company with a large market and potentially grow it from there, right? So I mean, that's just a general thing. I'm just very fascinated with this space right now, considering, being a financial media company. But the buy now, pay later are one of the first people who reached out to us at the beginning of this year. So it's just crazy to kind of see how quickly this space has kind of grown itself. What are your thoughts?
Go for it, Reggie.
Why me?
Come on, you have some thoughts.
Okay, man. So I think a few things, right? A few things is driving this growth of the buy now, pay later space. So if you think about it, buy now, pay later, it's not revolutionary by any chance in terms of tech, right? So from a technology, from a processor standpoint, it's like, okay, there is a different way to go about doing this, and you guys have sorted it out. Okay, great, good stuff. But I think what is interesting is that through exactly like what CS said, right? They're one of the earlier guys to talk to us, and they entered the space late last year, somewhere along those lines, right? So all your biggest players, they all came in around last year and the year before and thereabouts, right? So if you think about it, I don't want to look like I'm looking into a crystal ball, but I do think that they also managed to ride through the whole COVID wave, right? So where people are trying to keep a little bit more cash, drag their payments for a little bit longer, or maybe buy something that they need, and they could kind of run through certain payment cycles, through their next few months of paycheck. So what have you, right? So as with any other new rise of credit features, so this is, I won't say this is a credit, but it is actually cutting up your payment your payment chunks, right? So in some ways, it is pseudo credit, and as with any kind of increase in credit, you see an increase in spending, right? So you see people consuming more, whatever you are. I'm sure everybody has, got your first credit card, your first debit card, your first Nets card, whatever you, man. Every time you have an increase in ease of spending, it happens, right? So it makes it easier for you to consume and all that jazz. So I'm not surprised that some of these companies are riding this wave. And for a lot of the big companies to want to acquire and be in this space, I would think PayPal, Square is very serious about the business. Amazon is kind of like, I don't know, man, Amazon. But Amazon is Amazon.
What business isn't Amazon in, right? That's the real question we need to ask.
Yeah. I just saw a report that they're squeezing out FedEx and UPS and what have you. That people are just using Amazon these days, right? So crazy guys. But yeah.
Awesome. I mean, I think just a bit of clarification from ECS, right? So with Afterpay, with Affirm, with these sort of buy now, pay later schemes, is this effectively paid off in credit by, say, Affirm, and then it splits up into, say, monthly payments or annual payments or quarterly payments, depending on how you want to pay back, and then pay back at a 0% interest rate? How would that work?
That's exactly it. So what's essentially happening is these companies are essentially fronting the bill, right? the way they make money right now is they charge their what do you call them? Merchants. There we go. A percentage, right, to essentially be on the platform and help essentially get new sales for them. And then, so then as the user, you can essentially buy now and then pay it over the next 3-4 installments, right? So it's 3-4 months worth. And like for me, like as someone who's very interested in the direct to consumer space, like every single direct to consumer, like anything that's above $1,000 has some sort of buy now, pay later program attached to it, right? And it's, once again, like what Reggie's saying, it just makes it that much easier to afford at this moment, right? Instead of trying to save up that $1,000, you can be like, it's only $250 for the next 4 months, right? And which, I mean, as a user, like as someone who could potentially use it, that's a great thing for me, right? I can essentially keep my money a bit longer, leave it in something that pays me a small percentage of interest, and then pay it off for something, right? But yeah, definitely the big challenge there would be how many people end up overspending because of this. And, what additional debts is kind of brought on. And ultimately, these companies are the ones who are going to have to write it off, right? So is this going to be a cost of doing business for them? Or is this going to be, hey, we need to revisit this whole system?
Fair enough. So I think, two things I want to bring up. Sorry, Reg. Getting more airtime on myself. One of it, I think we've seen it earlier on, like before all these. So these sort of companies started a few years ago, but earlier than that, we've always had in Asia, at least Singapore, one of the big ones is credit cards, right? Buy now, 0% interest for the next 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. And that's effectively how I furnished my home, right? To be completely honest with you, I just whacked it. And I think this is sort of taking that into almost every transaction. And if you notice, and coming to my second point, it's doing that at scale. And I believe that's what Afterpay and Affirm is trying to do, as opposed to credit cards that sort of have that agreement with that merchant, for example, et cetera, et cetera. Now, second lever is, you notice the e-commerce systems are the ones sort of buying it. You've got Amazon, you've got PayPal, there's a sort of a transaction system. But the other big one was Square, right? Now, is it, I'm just like questioning, is this the biggest lever for them to increase their revenue? Because people are already spending on them so much, and now they're limited by the people's salary. So is it the biggest lever for them to increase 20, 30% on revenue by getting these guys to spend more by acquiring buy now, pay later?
A personal story here. I have a few friends that run smaller businesses, right? So chiropractor, what have you, like interior design firms and all that, right? And they do say that they see vivid increase in closing rates whenever they have installment plans. Right? So this is a real thing. People do increase their spending with ease of credit and lower upfront costs, right? So it makes it easier for them to fork out the money. And it used to be very expensive with some of these Visa, MasterCard, or Net system here to process this kind of payment structure. What happens is a lot of the merchants that want to have this kind of installment service with MasterCard and Visa, they actually have to take out a lump sum to begin with. So they have to put in a 200,000 or 500,000 kind of capital lump sum with these companies or with one of the big banks. I cannot remember exactly, but the merchants have to take out a lump sum to get this credit facility to provide the installment plan for their end customers, which is why adoption is not very high. What a lot of these new payment companies, whether it's Affirm, Afterpay, Hula, what have you, they are essentially making the upfront adoption very, very easy. And they have definitely calculated their bad debt ratio at the back to know that, okay, based on our research, based on our few years of operation in a smaller scale, this is the percentage of bad debt and what have you. All right, so they have sorted out their formula at the back. If not, I don't think they can grow that far and that aggressive and be adopted and then be essentially bought out or integrated with other platforms. So if you just look at Affirm's physical revenue, right, for financial year 2022, they are expecting their GMV, gross merchant value, which means all the money that's going to be processed through them, Affirm, is going to be $12.5 billion on average, compared to financial year 2021 is 8.3 billion. So if you think about it, that is close to a 40% increase in GMV. Okay, so gross merchant value does not directly indicate top line revenue growth, but bigger gross merchant value will allow them to have more, more LTV, more long-term value from a lot of these customers that are in their ecosystem already, right? So interesting company, definitely it's an interesting move forward. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, especially with all these mergers, because they are definitely burning cash to acquire customers, but maybe, it's a new form of credit, new form of spending. We're going to see consumer change their behaviors. Yes.
Yes, and that's partly what I'm a little worried about as well. So obviously you've got the business side of things, which I think is great for Amazon, for Square. I think Amazon is going to purchase this if this kind of works out. I just have a hunch. Well, it's Amazon. But what's it do to consumer behavior? And I think that's a bit of a question mark. And I think Reggie, you were mentioning this, but where small people, small families like us, for example, spend more because guess what? I don't have to pay until 12 months from now. And I'm only forking out $400. So I'm not going to buy a cheap aircon. I'm going to buy the most expensive one you have and put it in all my rooms and multiply that for every single item that you have. And that's going to inflate their own P&L, their own cash flow, their own salary to affect how much they can actually save.
So just want to clarify that in Singapore, the payment cycles is 3 cycles. So you have 3 months. Right. So if you think about it, that's also a risk management strategy by the banks or by the companies. Right. So by these payment companies, depending on how long your sales cycle, how long is your breakdown of your payments, and how big is the ticket, it's all going to affect the overall risk of whether or not they can collect this money in the long term or in the midterm. Right. So I think they have definitely factored in a lot of risk management systems, in their allocation of credit. As for all you consumers that are listening, if you are wondering all these stuff, you can definitely go to the TFC podcast. We have interviewed another payment company in Singapore to understand a little bit more about, how is this space going to be developing and what are your choices as an individual. Yes.